Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, the whistleblower's own words. The memo detailing concern over a call made by President Trump is made public as the House ramps up talk of impeachment.
I will be the next congressman from the 50th Congressional District.
Darrell Issa makes it official. He launches his campaign against Congressman Duncan Hunter, but not everyone there supported him. And for another local congressman, a day of protest, climate activists say one San Diego Democrat isn't doing enough. And San Diego hosts a growing force in entertainment. What you need to know about Twitchcon happening this weekend. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Good evening. It's Thursday, September 26th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Priya Sridhar. More evidence and testimony. Today, the nation watched as the acting director of national intelligence told his story to members of Congress. It's part of the impeachment inquiry into President Trump's call to the president of Ukraine and whether he sought help for his re-election. Here's some of what was said today.
Can we at least agree that the Inspector General made a sound conclusion that this whistleblower complaint was credible?
That is correct. That is in the cover letter that's been provided to the committee. I believe that's also made public, the decision and the recommendation by the Inspector General that, in fact, the allegation was credible.
Were you aware that that is the unprecedented position of the White House you went to for advice about whether you should turn over a complaint involving the White House?
Mr. Chairman, as I said in my opening statement, I believe that everything here in this matter is totally unprecedented.
This latest gambit by the Democrats to overturn the people's mandate is unhinged and dangerous. They should end the entire dishonest, grotesque spectacle and get back to work to solving problems.
Today's hearing comes as the formal whistleblower complaint was made public. Mary Maloney has more on that and reaction from Washington.
As Congress continued its impeachment inquiry, President Trump arrived in Washington and fought back.
What these guys are doing, Democrats are doing to this country, is a disgrace, and it shouldn't be allowed.
A whistleblower claimed President Trump abused the power of the presidency by asking the president of Ukraine to interfere in the 2020 elections and investigate Hunter and Joe Biden. According to a transcript of the call released by the White House, President Trump brought this up and asked for a favor. The president insists he did nothing wrong.
It's another witch hunt. Here we go again.
But the whistleblower's complaint details that White House officials were concerned and attempted to cover up the conversation by locking down the electronic transcript and move it to a secretive server.
This is a cover-up.
The Inspector General of the intelligence community says the whistleblower's claims appear credible and should be of urgent concern. At a contentious hearing on Capitol Hill, the acting director of national intelligence defended the whistleblower.
I think the whistleblower did the right thing. I think he followed the law every step of the way.
But urged an investigation, since the whistleblower is an intelligence official who did not witness any of the allegations in the complaint, but instead heard about it from multiple U.S. government officials.
Right now, all we have is an allegation for secondhand information from a whistleblower.
In Washington, Mary Maloney, KPBS News.
KPBS Radio had live coverage of today's hearing, and our coverage continued with reaction on the KPBS Midday Edition podcast. PBS NewsHour will have more tonight at 7 p.m., and of course, you can read more at kpbs.org. It was a busy day in the race for the 50th Congressional District, where several Republicans are challenging one of their own. Embattled Congressman Duncan Hunter, who will stand trial in January for federal charges that he misused campaign money. Former Republican Congressman for the 49th District, Darrell Issa, debuted his campaign to represent the 50th District today in El Cajon.
Today, I'm announcing that I will be the next congressman from the 50th Congressional District. I'm dedicated to do that because I believe that I have the history, the skills, the seniority, and the capability to hit the ground running not just for this district, but for California.
Issa represented the 49th district for 18 years, but decided not to seek re-election in 2018. He announced his candidacy with several other Republican heavy hitters from the area. County Supervisor Diane Jacob lent her support to Issa.
There is, as we know, a significant amount of turbulence that's going on in Washington, D.C., and unfortunately, I think it's going to get worse rather than getting better. And we cannot afford to get this election wrong. El Cajon Mayor Bill Wells and former Mayor of Escondido, Sam Abed, both dropped out of the race and gave their support to Issa.
I feel safe and confident in taking back my promise to run for the 50th district. I'm going to drop out of the race and support Darrell Issa fully.
Former U.S. Navy SEAL Larry Wilski was also in attendance. He followed Abed and Wells and dropped out of the running to back the former congressman.
And right now, Sam, I'm going to disagree with you. We're not dropping out of this race. What we're doing is we're joining one team, one fight. So Sam's not dropping out, Bill's not dropping out, I'm not. What we're doing is we're unifying around leadership that has brought us together, and that's the kind of leadership that will bring our country together.
But I felt that Secretary...
Issa's news conference was briefly interrupted when about a dozen supporters of Carl DeMaio, who is also running for the 50th seat, showed up and started chanting. Issa quit! DeMaio held his own rally after Issa's to reaffirm his commitment to his campaign.
I'm not seeking a title. I'm seeking to fight, because nobody has fought up to this point. All we've seen are these career politicians like Mr. Issa quit on us and then come back and say, oh, you're my third choice. I quit on my own district. I quit on the president. The Democrats scared me, so I ran away with my tail between my legs. And now you're my third choice.
Republican State Senator Brian Jones recently announced his candidacy. Duncan Hunter's former Democratic challenger Amar Campanajjar has also said he'll be running again. Environmental activists disrupted work at the San Diego office of Congressman Scott Peters today. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says they want the lawmaker to support the Green New Deal.
Scott Peters needs to sign the pledge. Scott Peters needs to co-sponsor the Green New Deal, H.R. 109.
The protest began in the courtyard of the La Jolla building that houses the congressman's office. Megaphones, whistling, and chanting disrupted the normally sedate building, and the protesters occupied the congressman's office.
Scott Peters! Step aside!
The activists are trying to convince Peters to support the Green New Deal. That's a sweeping policy initiative that attempts to curb carbon emissions and overhaul the way the nation's economy works.
We're calling on Representative Scott Peters to...
Protester Peter Sloan says the group wants to raise the alarm about climate change.
We're in a planetary emergency, and the science has been known for decades, but our political leaders just aren't acting on it, and it's time for them to really step up or step aside.
Peters hasn't shown much flexibility on the issue. In an August interview with KPBS, the lawmaker said he didn't agree with the Green New Deal because it's too broad and doesn't contain any actual legislation.
I don't think it's bold, and I don't think it's action. Look, I totally support the enthusiasm that it's brought. I'm really happy to see that voters appear to be interested in what I've been interested in for 20 years, which is climate action, and they're taking votes based on that. But the Green New Deal is not bold in that it doesn't bring anybody else in.
We are raising the alarm.
Peters says he doesn't support including free education or guaranteed job proposals in a climate action measure. He argues those items should be debated separately.
There's such a limited time to take action on climate change. And
Masada Diesenhaus is the director of San Diego 350.
We will continue to try and convince Scott Peters and our other elected officials that we really need bold, comprehensive action on climate change.
The protest ended without any arrests, even though almost a dozen people say they were prepared to go to jail. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
It's the largest gift of its kind and the second largest ever for an academic institution. And it will all go towards studying solutions for climate change. Caltech in Pasadena will receive $750 million. The money comes from Stuart and Linda Resnick. They own the company that makes wonderful pistachios and other products. The gift will fund research on environmental sustainability. The Trump administration says California is not doing enough to prevent water pollution. The Environmental Protection Agency has sent a letter to Governor Gavin Newsom to come up with a detailed plan within 30 days. If not, the agency could take action. The EPA claims homelessness in large cities is the cause. San Francisco is criticized for discharging inadequately treated sewage into the ocean. This is just the latest in a series of conflicts between California and the agency. California could lose over $500 million in federal funding if a Trump administration rule goes into effect next month. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler tells us how a rule meant to discourage immigrants from accessing social services could have a far-reaching impact on the state's healthcare system.
A study released last week by researchers at UCLA and the California Immigrant Policy Center says that under the Trump administration's public charge rule, California could lose $510 million in federal funding that would have gone to hospitals, labs, and other health services in the state. The public charge rule would make it difficult for immigrants to obtain legal status in the country if they've used or are likely to use social services, like the state's federally funded Medi-Cal program. Since the rule was first announced last year, enrollment in social services throughout the state's immigrant population has already begun to decrease. Alma Saeed is an attorney at the California Immigrant Policy Center.
So families are preemptively disenrolling, choosing the opportunity to stay over things like housing and food and basic, subsistence, including healthcare.
The report recommends a series of policy proposals meant to counteract the chilling effect of the public charge rule. One of those proposals is the creation of an express lane where people can sign up for multiple services at once at offices like this, a WIC office. There, they can meet with specialists who would explain how the public charge rule could impact their immigration status. The state of California is also suing in federal court over the implementation of the new rule before it is set to take effect next month. A hearing in federal court in San Francisco is scheduled for October 2nd. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
More details are emerging from the charges filed against 13 Marines accused in connection with a human trafficking operation. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh looks at how this fits in with the history of smuggling in San Diego.
The Marines are accused of being part of a ring that transported migrants from the border to locations in central and northern San Diego County. They were all junior Marines. None of them made more than $23,000 a year. The 28 pages of redacted charge sheets released by the Marines show that all 13 charged are from the 5th Regiment at Camp Pendleton, most from the same battalion. Their battalion can be seen drilling at Camp Pendleton in this Defense Department video taken in September. 6 are charged directly with driving migrants from the Mexico border. The earliest case is from May 19. The most recent case is from July 10th. One Marine is accused of smashing a cell phone to conceal evidence. The charges stem from an investigation prompted by the July 3rd arrest of 2 Marines. Border Patrol agents had spotted 3 migrants climbing into a civilian car on the side of the highway, close to the border. Theron Francisco, Border Patrol spokesman, said smugglers often enlist young drivers who aren't familiar with San Diego.
And they're not familiar with the Border Patrol or how the border region works, and that just plays in the hand of the smugglers. They don't give them a lot of information. They keep it very vague. Hey, I just need to pick up some people at this known location, bring them back here.
In exchange for driving migrants north from the Mexico border to a safe house, the 2 Marines who were originally charged say smugglers promised to pay them $1,000.
Well, these smugglers may think it's a benefit on their behalf to have a Marine or somebody in law enforcement to be a potential load driver.
Last year, a California National Guardsman was arrested for a similar attempt. Smugglers have worked with Marines at Camp Pendleton as early as 1979. That's when a group of Marines and their wives were discovered to have moved several thousand undocumented migrants through Camp Pendleton as a way to avoid a Border Patrol checkpoint. The lure of what some people see as easy money enjoys widespread appeal. Pedro Rios with the American Friends Service Committee, which works with migrants, says plenty of people without ties to the military get caught up in smuggling.
The fact that there's a border wall doesn't stop this type of activity from taking place on either side. There's always has been an attempt to infiltrate some of the agencies such as Border Patrol and exploit some of the loopholes that they have.
Rios has worked with immigration issues since the 1990s. He says these networks have become more elaborate as measures to maintain the border have become more restrictive.
If the Marines were infiltrated in this way, might there be other agencies in the law enforcement world that have been infiltrated as well?
He's right. The highest profile smuggling case in San Diego County involves not the Marines, but two brothers who worked as agents for the Border Patrol. Fidel and Raul Villarreal were convicted in 2013 of taking bribes to move migrants across the border in San Diego. In 2018, Raul's attorney argued that his 30-plus year sentence should be lowered before a panel that included federal appellate court judge Susan Graber.
These folks violated their trust and did exactly the opposite of what they were hired by the people to do.
In the most recent case involving the Marines, the ring isn't described as being nearly as sophisticated as the one involving the two convicted Border Patrol agents. The Marines aren't releasing the names until the convening authority decides which Marines will face courts-martial. Federal officials have dropped the case against the two original Marines charged with human smuggling so they can be tried in military court. Interesting fact, the smuggler never paid the two Marines originally arrested in July. The Border Patrol says it's a sign of how hard-nosed human traffickers can be with the people they recruit. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, in the hot seat, the U.S. intelligence chief faces tough questions about the Trump administration handling of a whistleblower complaint against the president. At 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Well, it should be a dry night, but we might see more rain in parts of San Diego this weekend. Dajia Swad has tonight's forecast.
As we continue through tonight, that wet weather will continue to move further to the east, but in the past 24 hours, we did see some accumulation of rain here in Pine Valley as well as Mount Laguna, some areas above a ½ an inch. As we head out to the coast, though, wasn't that impressive with the rainfall totals. And for tonight, what we'll see here in San Diego are a bit more cloud cover rolling in, dropping down into the upper 60s, also turning cloudy into Oceanside. You can see that here for your Futurecast, 6 p.m. local time. We'll have the clouds available, some showers trying to dive in from the north as you move into your Friday. Really limited with the moisture for Friday morning, but clouds definitely available near that coast. So as we move into tonight's forecast, temperature-wise, mid-60s in Oceanside, cooling down to 67 in Borrego Springs and a low 51 in Mount Laguna. No need for the umbrella. We're going to be watching cooler air come in from the north. Friday, we are on the pleasant side, but further inland out to the deserts and mountains, some of those spots are a bit below normal. If you're out towards Borrego Springs, a high of 92, upper 60s in Mount Laguna, and topping off at 74 in San Diego, topping off at 76 in Oceanside, with clouds definitely available through those morning hours, trying to get a bit more sunshine coming your way a little later on in the day. Then we run into your Saturday, widespread cool air going to be coming in from the north. We start to see a change here as we're watching an upper level disturbance, but also going to be a low pressure system tracking its way through Utah. That disturbance is going to usher in cooler air and the chance for some wet conditions as we move into your Saturday. Not only wet, but some breezy conditions across the region. So Saturday, a high of 74 at the coast. Showers are going to be available in spots. Low clouds remain for our Sunday, and highs remain in the lower 70s through your Monday, with more sunshine for the early week. Looking at a pretty similar forecast here. Cool air going to be noticeable Saturday, Sunday in inland areas. Saturday, best chance for a passing shower as we track out that upper level disturbance. And if you're out to the mountains, breezy conditions with a high at 62, remaining in the lower 60s Sunday and Monday, as well as your Tuesday. And also seeing that cool air come your way into the deserts. High of 92 Friday, but into the 80s Saturday and Sunday. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Dajia Swad. Back to you.
The income gap is growing, and California is one of the trouble spots. The U.S. Census Bureau lists 9 states where income inequality grew last year, pushing the overall gap to its highest level in 50 years of tracking. That's according to its annual American Community Survey. It found a median household income of $63,000, the highest in the survey's history. However, the data also shows growing extremes at both ends of the income spectrum. KPBS often reports on the issue of affordability when it comes to housing. A solution for some is to build a granny flat, but it can be a difficult and expensive process. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman explains how the county is trying to make it easier.
We do have a housing crisis in San Diego County. And so what we're trying to do is to help people to be able to put affordable housing, by the way, these accessory dwelling units, they used to be called granny flats, on their property.
As an incentive, the county is now offering pre-approved floor plans and earlier this year waived permitting fees, saving potential builders around $30,000.
That's a big deal. So the whole goal is to provide some incentives for property owners in the unincorporated area to build these.
Even though there are pre-approved plans, building standards still need to be met before construction.
It's a building permit that they need. We're just waiving the fees. So you have to have adequate sewage disposal, water, infrastructure.
The county is hoping the move will spur affordable housing, but there's no cap on monthly rent.
That would be up to the property owner, but it only makes sense. If you're renting out a 600 square foot unit, that rent's going to be a whole lot less than the average market rent.
Jacob says the granny flats cannot be used as short-term rentals. Still, she thinks many will be interested in building with the new incentives.
We do have 172,000 existing homes on existing lots in the unincorporated area. If you take 10% of those, that's a big number. So it would certainly make a dent into meeting our housing needs into the future.
Since the county started waiving permitting fees in January, Jacob says an expected 216 accessory dwelling units will be built. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Twitchcon returns to the San Diego Convention Center this weekend. In recent years, the platform has become a major player in streaming media. KPBS's Annika Colbert has this preview.
Right. We're gonna play Friday the 13th with Team Stream Queens.
Drag and horror games. Deary is one of the many unique Twitch personalities who's gonna be here in San Diego this weekend to talk about their work. Now, if you're not familiar with Twitch, it's the top platform where you can watch people play video games. It beats out YouTube, Facebook, and Microsoft's Mixer.
Your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt.
On Twitch as Malosi.
But when you poured out your heart, I didn't waste it.
That said, streaming isn't just for video games anymore. Card games, roleplay sessions, podcasts, esports, video game conferences, and more are all on Twitch. Today, convention goers were lined up to get their entry badges for the weekend. TwitchCon will have a series of esports tournaments with more than $2 million in the prize pool. It'll also have business panels for streamers to learn tricks of the trade, a cosplay contest co-hosted by Adam Savage, NASA has a panel to talk about sending women to the moon, and Blink-182 and Lil Nas X will headline a big party at Petco Park on Saturday. Annika Colbert, KPBS News.
And for an earlier generation, it was all about the music. And today, an iconic album marks a big anniversary. The Beatles' Abbey Road was released 50 years ago. Today in London, fans showed up to the famous street crossing pictured on the album cover. Rick Damigella tells us about an extensive new edition of the album.
Come together right now over me.
The Beatles' Abbey Road debuted September 26, 1969. In celebration of its 50th anniversary, Giles Martin, son of Beatles producer George Martin, has put together a new mix of the album.
Recordings are just that. They're a timestamp. And all we're doing here is we're opening the door to that time and then trying to make it as fresh as possible.
He previously crafted new mixes for the anniversary editions of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and the White Album.
Because on one hand, you have the don't mess with the legacy. On the other hand, you have the Beatles and the Beatles' attitude, which is you've got to push the boundaries as much as you can. I mean, you know, Paul and Ringo, and indeed Yoko and Olivia, they don't employ me to be safe. They don't want that.
I'd like to be under the sea.
The album is available in traditional formats, but the holy grail for Beatles fans is the Super Deluxe Edition, featuring 3 CDs, a Blu-ray version presented in Dolby Atmos, 23 session recordings and demos, many of which are previously unreleased, and a 100-page hardbound book with unpublished photos among its many features.
It sounds more modern. I think it's also quite a good gateway into the Beatles for a younger generation.
Here comes the sun.
In Hollywood, I'm Rick Damigella.
And for those who are fans of country, PBS just wrapped up the critically acclaimed Ken Burns documentary, Country Music. The final part of the series aired last night on KPBS and drew a large audience. The documentary looks at the origin and growth of the country music genre and its roots in American culture. If you missed it, you can still stream it anytime online at pbs.org. A follow-up now to a rescue of a sea otter, and quite frankly, the video is just too cute not to show you. Officials at SeaWorld today say Cinder, a pup found stranded and malnourished in Alaska in August, is on the road to recovery. She's doubled her weight and reached all expected development milestones. Cinder is one of more than 800 marine animals rescued and rehabilitated this year. And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, tracking the flu season, new changes on how the county will deliver information to the public this year. And on Roundtable, your energy bill might be changing. SDG&E wants to restructure some of its pricing, including a big increase for those charged the minimum rate. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you have a great evening.